want to make
Report
sure
on.
I can. Okay. Okay. And then I want to open up the chat and see if I can catch things along the way. I'm a pretty informal person. So if you have a question, maybe Bob, you might be able to help me with the manage the chats, wave me down, let me
Yep,
know if something's in there.
I will do
Um,
that.
Super. All right. So yeah, let's get started. I'm really excited about this presentation tonight, and we'll walk through the objectives, and then I'm going to share a little background or some context on sort of how this came about. This is 30 years in the making. I started this when I was 7. No, I'm just kidding. But what we're going to do is we'll talk about the 6 stages of growth. And I had sent out or included a diagnostic tool called the Growth Readiness Scorecard. And several people filled it out, which I was really excited about. And I was able to send them their custom reports. I have a QR code in the presentation tonight because that would be sort of a really good next step to take that. But as we move along, we're going to look at the 10 elements per stage and how span or differences of perceptions can be a good thing to prevent us from drifting or regressing from the stage of growth that we've achieved, because you don't just get it and stay there. You got to keep earning it every day. And then we'll look at some practical strategies for leadership, culture, and operational efficiency. And then we'll introduce how I use AI. I use it every day. I use it with all my clients, and there are a lot of tips and tricks I can share. I know that's not the main focus of today, but I will share how I use it specifically in the process of helping companies sustainably grow. When I was quite younger, I recognized in the quality industry and working with a lot of manufacturers and mostly mid-sized, small to mid-sized organizations. The symptom that I faced was that the quality systems work really great. I'd go in and do consulting or a project, and then we're building capacity, the ability to fulfill on promises made, and then the business would struggle with their growth challenges. And so I really got to thinking about that a lot. And in 1998, I came across a model by a person named Grenier, and it was the five stages of, it wasn't organizational growth, it was the life cycle. There was 5 stages of the organizational life cycle, and I was really compelled by it. I don't know why. I'm kind of strange, very curious. And what I loved about it was that it was so succinct, and it made it really clear, like how the organization evolves. And but I what I wanted to create was a predictive way to get from stage to stage, so that when I work with clients, I can say, and here's what you can expect next, and then this, and then this. So it's literally a map. I really wanted that. So the last literally 30 years almost, I've been etching away at this with, boots on the ground, lots of clients, every industry imaginable, from startups to Fortune 500s, just testing and refining. And that's culminated in the 6 stages. So what I realized was the growth in infrastructure, and this isn't anything brilliant, but growth and infrastructure have a part to play with each other. It's almost like breathing. And we'll talk about that more as we get to the stages. But when you're just starting up, you're just pushing, your product, your service, your concept out into the world. It's like exhaling. Here it is, and then you can only exhale for so long, and then you might pass out. So at some point, you have to build infrastructure to support that next level of growth. And so it's sort of this breathing in and out. So you build infrastructure, then you're ready to expand. Then you get to a certain level where, we got to build infrastructure again, and then we grow. So there's this rhythm of business that goes back and forth. And sometimes there's a lot of industries in the quality industry. I found it to be one that I've been in for many years that really focuses on the infrastructure. We shine there, but then there's these stages in between that are very growth oriented. And so leaders have a difficult time knowing when to pull in the reins on one and get the other one moving forward. So we'll talk more about that. 70% of organizations fail to scale their quality culture with growth. So we always realize, leadership, culture, organizational, like your political structure and your reward structure. I call those the 4 pillars of organizational greatness. Those things have to move in line with the initiatives and change management and all the continuous improvement um, initiatives that we have, whether it be Lean, Baldrige, Six Sigma, ISO, what have you, it's very difficult for the culture to stay caught up. So that was another area that I really wanted to solve for. And basically 30 years in the trenches, told me that there just isn't a framework that does this. So I was like, challenge accepted. Here we go. So drum roll, here is the framework. It's very simple. Easy isn't simple. Took me a long time to boil it down, and I was trying to prove it wrong many times, and this is what we came up with. So what I love about it is it does predictively help companies grow and sustain growth. And it's important to denote that a lot of businesses and frameworks look at growth simply as revenue, headcount, and tenure, years in business. And while those are very important, what's missing is this layer of organizational maturity. So I'm pushing the movement on organizational maturity to be the standard, because we can grow. We could be billions of dollars and be falling apart at the seams. So we can increase our head count and increase complexity, not necessarily efficiency. So I like those numbers, and I'm not saying to definitely don't get rid of them, but let's think about maturity on top of that, and then it really amplify the results. So it's based on very innate human behaviors. My PhDs in leadership and organizations. I consider myself a modern day philosopher. I go very deep in my head to think about things and test things. I'm very curious. And ultimately what showed up, and we're going to walk through each of these stages, but in essence, they're not like nice little boxes with a bow on top. It's more like trying to push over a Coke machine. So everybody is familiar with starting up and that, entrepreneurial innovation. Won't go into it in great detail. That's where we're really pushing, trying to prove beyond our sphere of influence that what we have solves a problem or fulfills a need in the marketplace. That's it. Then we get organized so we can grow bigger. When we grow bigger, the between stages 3 and 4 is this really interesting fork in the road where clients will either fall down kind of a bureaucratic trap where they're over engineering their SOPs and their standardizations and policies and protocols, or they've pushed decision making and other things down to the lowest levels and they become really more democratic. So it's a lot going on between stages 3 and 4. 4 is pulling together. Stage 5 is innovating together, and you can't leap ahead. All of these stages have a very distinct, what I call a crisis catalyst, which is the roadblock that you can't, in essence, get to the next level until you solve for that crisis catalyst. Elements of the business can mature faster than that crisis catalyst, but in essence, it'll always come back, and you'll always be sort of begrudgingly pulling this thing along until you break through it. So that's where the predictability piece comes in. And then stage 6 is really staying fresh, staying relevant internally and externally to the marketplace, and agile internally. Now, there is another element to this that I don't have in the other slide, so I'm going to share it here. I've done a lot of speaking engagements around agile and adaptive. And I think it's an important point to bring up because the agile and adaptive are different things. And so operational definitions are really important to me. I think of agile as being internally focused. And then adaptive is adapting to the marketplace. And so as you go from stage 1 to 6, 1 is being very adaptive. We're looking out to the marketplace to make sure that what we create fits. And then we have to become agile and build that infrastructure again. So it's adaptive, agile, adaptive, agile, adaptive, agile. But in stage 6, we're really balancing both. So I'm hoping that makes sense so far. And if I don't see any questions, so I'm going to keep on rolling through here. All right, here's another way to think about it. So I talked about it a little bit like breathing. I'm a big horse gal. I've had horses my whole life, and I draw a lot of wisdom about leadership and cultures and management from horses. I know that's odd, but hey, that's what it is. So imagine these horses are pulling a cart, and that cart is your organization. One horse is named growth, the other horse is named infrastructure. And as you can see from the tack that's holding them together, which is your systems and processes and culture and leadership and how you make decisions and how people are rewarded. It's all of those elements that we're going to get to in a moment. Those horses can't be too far ahead of each other. If growth gets too far ahead of infrastructure, we've got problems, right? We can't fulfill on the promises we're making. If infrastructure gets too far ahead of the growth horse, then we probably are stuck and we need some revenues coming in. And I think one of the things that I love about my work is teaching inspired leaders, CEOs, executive teams how to put almost like sensors and triggers in place so that we can predictively see when one's getting a little too far ahead. And nobody likes to hear, "Oh, we got to pull the reins in on growth." Oh no, it's a window of opportunity. We're going to miss it. Well, the alternative is worse, is to hit it out of the park and not be ready for it. So there is this very fine balance between growth and infrastructure, and sometimes it's hard to see when we're immersed in one particular industry that supports one side of the coin. So you've got a whole industry around business development, whole industry around capacity and operations and efficiency, and oftentimes they don't talk to each other very well. So that's what I've been trying to solve for. All right, the 10 elements per stage, as you can see here. And these were not, these are very intentional. Again, everything tried and tested in the field. And these 10 things move along and evolve as an organization moves from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 6. Now, as I mentioned, stage 6 is not better than stage 2. Not everybody wants to be at stage 6. So my parents is a great example. My parents had an insulation business in Sacramento for 40 years. And let me run back to this slide for a second. And they stayed very comfortably between stages 2 and 3. They had a lot of opportunities to grow bigger. My dad was kind of known for being an honest guy with integrity, and people would call him out and say, "Hey, do we need insulation in the attic?" And he'd say, "No, you actually don't. You're good." And so he and my mom ran this business, and my mom was always the one who wanted to grow bigger. My dad was like, "Cool your horses, Cheryl. Let's stay where we're at." And for 40 years, they ran a really successful business. Their employees stayed with them for 20 plus years, and they succeeded that business to my brother. So there is no shame, or there is nothing wrong with staying in a lower stage, although we can't stay in startup forever because we'll burn everybody out. But between stage 2 and 3, it's a lot of businesses stay there. Once they get to a certain size and level of capacity, they have to start trying to move into stage 5, innovating together. Again, you're dragging along all of these elements, how we make decisions, how leaders lead. And if you took the pre-session assessment, all of the questions in the assessment related to these 10 areas and by stage. So that's kind of the map that we're playing from, which makes it really predictable. So main focus: response to change, key success measures, leadership, culture, how decisions are made, how do we primarily communicate with each other, how are people rewarded and recognized, what are our progress drivers, and then that infamous crisis catalyst. What's that gate that we have to get through before we can get to the next level? Now, some people had submitted their responses to me, and I tried like heck to get all of the assessments or the results analysis back to you. I think one came in around 4, and I promise I'll get that one out tomorrow as well. I love these things. It's me getting deep in my head. But let's walk through the stages, and as we're going along, kind of be thinking about where you think that your organization might be. And again, these are just key terms. I didn't pull all of the elements into each of them. That's going to be in my book that's coming out. But basically, in starting out, the big question is, do we have enough money in the bank to keep this thing going? I've worked with a ton of startups. That's always it. Whether they're really well funded with investments or they're bootstrapping it themselves, that stewardship of cash is king. It's the most important thing. So they've got, proving their concept, market validation, resource confirmation. Everybody is all in all the time. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It's exhausting. I love it for a while, but then I've got to get them growing up because the chaos is just too much. The founder tends to do everything in the early days. It's very, very informal. And like I said, it's very chaotic. So we have to find a way, how do we start getting to that next level is by getting organized. And so this is a very fancy way of saying, can we handle more work without things breaking down? A lot of small businesses reside here, and they vacillate between regressing back to stage one and then moving, wanting to move aspirationally into stage three. That span is not a bad thing, it's a perception thing. And so that's one thing that I address with teams that I work with, is ensuring that we're on the same page at all times across all of those elements that have to evolve with the business. So in stage two, this is going to be preaching to the choir here: efficiency, scalability, process standardization, systems, operational control, structure. And at this point, what happens in an interesting way is your founder or founders, usually it's a founder, has now just kind of given a little bit of the decision making to other people. Sometimes kicking and streaming, sometimes it's well, it's really welcomed, but generally it's a small leadership team. We haven't enabled the other layers of the business to make decisions and solve problems necessarily on their own. We say that we have, but we don't have systems and processes in place to allow them to be successful. So that's the difference. Moving on to stage three, this one is a little bit more interesting. This is where I was telling you my folks would sort of hit this place where big developer would say, "Hey, Larry, we'd love for you to be our guy." And with that comes the conversation. Do we want to evolve all of the things that are required to be that size and scope and expanded business? And they chose no, which was perfectly good for them. In stage three, when we're growing bigger, the crisis catalyst becomes, are we consistent across departments or regions? And in this case, we're looking at market diversification, geographic expansion, maintaining consistency. Consistency, again, I'm very consistent with consistency. Policy, it's a typo, protocol, and standardization here. So ultimately, that's where that horse race gets really important, right? Because we've gotten organized. We believe we're at a place where we can grow bigger, and as we're growing bigger, we're trying to keep that infrastructure right alongside of the growth. And what happens is things start to become very complex. We have different people doing different things, despite the fact that we have SOPs and protocols and policies. And where the hitch is that they're not being adhered to. So we may have them all in place, but nobody goes to look at the SOP, or no one's sure about what the policy is. And so it becomes where this fragmented place or juncture in the road where we start to see silos showing up. So that's probably the big thing that I see. Now, I have a client right now that is geographically expanding into multiple countries right now. But they are not a stage three. They're actually a quite more mature business. I've been working with them for 4 years, and they are at stage six, which we'll get to in a moment. But we just did our assessment recently, and we're fracturing a bit. So it's a good time for us to get back on the same page and ensure we are intentionally keeping our stake in the ground at stage six. Still no questions, so I'm going to keep moving along here. If you have a question, you can drop it in the chat, or you can just unmute and say, "Cyndi, I have a question." Stage four, as I mentioned, because that expansion and growth, pockets and different areas start doing their own things, it's hard to evolve the SOPs as fast as some growth happens. And so here, stage four, we have to pull back together. Right, we have to pause a little bit on our growth, or make sure that growth horse isn't getting too far ahead and knock the cart over. And so really, this is like, to me, this is one of the most fun places to be working with clients. This is where when I come in, it's usually all about discovery and auditing, like what the heck is really going on here, because it has gotten overly complex. So one of the first things that we do is we start reducing the complexity. We audit all the systems and how they're used, and even just something as simple as how many ways do we communicate with each other can be a really big problem in a company that's grown faster than the structure has been able to keep up with. And we're also looking at waste elimination and value stream mapping, in essence, making things work better together. Breaking down silos is a biggie. I'm a silo buster, which is super fun. Teams in this category here in this stage have a lot more freedom. We're pushing the decision making down to solve problems and to be able to keep aligned, with decentralization of decision making. It's a fine, again, it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science. And then the reward structure at this point also changes too. There's oftentimes there's profit sharing, company equity, and things of that nature. So where I see the most interest in this particular stage is that silo piece, because one of the most interesting things that I've observed over the years is this whole idea of optimization. I love optimization. However, it can get out of control and become a bit of a Frankenstein. And what I mean by that is if every function of the business starts to optimize itself, marketing is optimized, sales is optimized, customer service is optimized, then we are going to have a Frankenstein, because what's happening is we're not optimizing the relationships between the parts. We're just optimizing the parts. And in essence, we're breaking that ecosystem down by trying to raise each individual part of that business. So a lot of ways that we break these down, and the cross, I call it a hot potato meeting, but it's a cross-functional collaboration meeting, is one of the first things that we instill to really get the different functions aligned to where we are. I mean, some will say we're in stage 6 and other leaders will say we're in stage 2. That's a problem, because all of the perceptions that go with that are going to cause friction and drag. Honestly, it's a drag. Sorry, I have a bad sense of humor. All right, moving along. Stage 5, once we have been able to pull our systems together to create that cross-functional communication, and we're rewarding cross-team work, and we're rewarding those handoffs and the relationships between the parts, now we can innovate together. So lots of businesses want to jump forward. They want to jump from growing bigger up to stage 5 where they're innovating together. You can't skip stages in this game. It's like chutes and ladders. You can roll the dice and you can kind of move up and move up, and you can also regress as quickly as you're moving up. So there's a high level of intentionality in what stage you're in and where you want to go. If you want to get to stage 6, great. If you want to stay in stage 3, that's all right too. So in innovating together, the real kicker here is, are our teams integrating and innovating together, or have they continued to do that in their silos? And that's where symptoms of problems tend to show up, or issues show up. So in here, we incorporate those, I call them those hot potato meetings, because, and I like hot potato because at some point, every function of the business is going to be holding the hot potato. They're going to be the weakest link. They're going to be the one that's dragging the organization back. And oftentimes when I work with clients, it's funny because nobody wants to be that person, and finger pointing and blame comes to come to the game very quickly. And ultimately, once the team understands, like, kind of theory of constraints, there's always going to be a kink in the hose. Who's got the kink right now? Who has the hot potato now? And when we free that up as a team, we're cross-functionally solving for this together. Who's going to be next? And having that growth and infrastructure kind of overarching framework really helps teams see that, yeah, we're still on the growth side of the business, and maybe marketing is the kink at the time, and sales is like, hey, we need more marketing, and it's still over there. And sometimes it's moved on to the infrastructure side because sales and marketing and business development did their job, knocked it out of the park, and woo, we got business. So it's that game. It's this very fine balance, as I mentioned in the beginning, of innovating processes. At this point, we've got all kinds of breakthrough thinking. The team is one. They're really working in sync with each other. They're also focused on the outside of their departments and outside of the organization, to all stakeholders, to the satisfaction of all stakeholders. They're also really into building partnerships, cross team incentives, and the communication is very participatory and collaborative at this stage. Again, if any of these is lagging behind, it feels like, oh, we've got a culture problem, but really it could just be a malalignment of our perceptions of where we're at. And when we get aligned, that tends to resolve something that wasn't actually a full culture issue. But let me tell you, there's a lot of culture change management initiatives that are thrown around, and then they don't really do the trick. And it's like, well, why didn't that work? Well, it must have been a bad consultant. That book didn't work. Oftentimes I'm like the third or fourth consultant to come in, and it's malalignment more than it is the problem that we thought it was. So it's kind of exciting to be able to solve those quickly. All right, moving on to stage 6, staying fresh. And again, this is the place where people are like, "Woo, yes, we're there. We're at the pinnacle of maturity." And just like Chutes and Ladders, tariffs, regulatory changes, you lose a key individual. All of those are impetus to slide back. And it can be sliding all the way back to stage 1, or it can be we're in stage 6 and we're overcomplicating our work again, and we've slid back to stage 4. So this is a game of intentionality. In stage 6, we are really looking inside and outside at the same time. We're looking at market relevance. We're looking at our whole organization as a learning organization. We're looking for sustainable growth, self-adjusting systems. That's the biggie for me. That's where the real fun is. We're looking at creating value beyond the boundaries of our organization. When we're in stage 1, it's like survival mode to the nth degree. And as we mature through these different stages of growth, the amount of value that we can create in the world grows with that. And just again, I define value creation as solving a problem and fulfilling a need. So I have a really good story about that I'll share in a moment. And then the last one, leadership evolves to a place where leadership is seen in all roles. You lead from where you are. There's a lot of books and theories around that. And leadership becomes something that isn't just at the top. It's not pointing fingers at each other like, well, the leader should lead. Well, you should lead from where you're at. And I did a research, very anecdotal, back in 2005, and I asked all my contacts, what does leadership mean? And within 24 hours, I had 700 results, and I was like, uh-oh, my computer's going to break. So I read through them, and I sort of coded the language to see what were those patterns I was seeing. And it truly was that the people who held positions of leadership were looking at their team to say, lead. I'm enabling you to lead from where you're at. And the team members were saying, you're the leader, you lead. So with finger pointing going in both ways, I had to create a different definition. And so I did. And the definition that I used for leadership is based upon all of the surveys that I had gotten back and really kind of thinking about what it means. It's demonstrating your commitment to the success of people around you. And that is truly how team members in stage 6 show up as leaders, because they're always looking out at, okay, I've got my thing going on, but who's upstream, who's downstream? How does what I do impact the customer, even if I didn't feel like it did? Like, how are we all mapped together here? And once they can kind of see that, engagement goes up wildly. And let me see really quick. Still looking good. No questions. One of the tools or models that I created, I've got lots and lots of models. I'm going to share a few of them with you today. The framework is one, and it's supported by lots of other models and frameworks that I've created. So this modern day GPA, this is a model that I use that really helps inspire leadership when you get up to the stage 5 and 6 realm of organizational maturity, because that does not happen naturally. And what the modern day GPA is, it is based upon my years as a professor. I was a professor for 27 years, 10 at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, 7 at National Graduate School, and 6 or 23 years at Benedictine University in Mesa. And one of the things I would tell my students is, you're so focused on your GPA, but when you graduate, nobody cares. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. So creating a new GPA for them to focus on as they graduated and went into the working world was important. And then it happened to really support stage 5 and 6, which is kind of a nice bonus. So what does it means to really get to that place where leadership is so decentralized that employees are engaged, is really based upon the leadership. The positional leadership first has to take the first run at this, and create the conditions for it to show up. So what you can see here is the G for GPA is gratitude, and gratitude doesn't happen by itself. So leaders have to kind of create those conditions for team members to express gratitude. And how that shows up is not by giving them things. It's not perks. It's not buying a ping pong table. It's really ensuring that the systems and processes that they manage work. And if they don't work, the person managing them has the ability to improve them so that they can work. We don't want to set people up to fail. I love W. Edwards Deming exactly for this. Is, look at the process before you look at the person. And yet we throw people in the fire all the time. So leadership creates conditions for team members to express gratitude. Leadership also creates conditions, or the leaders create conditions for team members to experience pride. Pride is really something that's missing in today's organizations in terms of pushing people to do things beyond what they think they can do. So when you see, and this is a direct relationship to the level of engagement that we see in organization. Gallup polls has said it's around 33% that's engaged for decades, and it's crazy. We just double down on what's not working. So creating conditions for people to experience pride in their work and to express it is a great thing. Causing them to do things outside their comfort zone, because you can't give someone pride. They got to earn it. They got to earn it by doing something they didn't really think they can do. Pushing decision making down to people is one of those ways that they feel like, wow, I actually have some control in the game here. And then and I see that there's a chat, so I'll get to that in a moment. Creating conditions for team members to see the link between their impact and the impact that the business makes in the marketplace. The A is for being a part of something bigger than themselves. Again, wildly missing in today's society, and especially in the working world. And so I have we're going to walk through a process to do that. I know I'm covering a lot of ground quickly, but this is recorded so we can all watch it again. I just want to make sure I give you as much as I possibly can in the time we have together. So let's look at that. I'm going to hop to the next slide, and then I'm going to take a look at the chat here. Okay, it says that it seems that every few years, my organization, which is in financial services, undergoes a significant reorganization where they either centralize specific cost driver teams outside of the business teams or split them up and distribute them back into the business teams. Do you see this as helping an organization grow? That's a great question. And my answer is it depends. I would need a little bit more information on the context and what they were looking to achieve. This reminds me a little bit, though, of the culture thing I was telling you about, where the culture doesn't keep up with the business, and they say, oh, we have a culture problem. So they spend all this money and resources trying to make a great culture, and it doesn't do anything. A lot of companies like to jump to reorganization. This is a great segue for what we're going to cover next, because if they're doing the reorganization in a way that makes sense, then yes, that could be. But if they're not sure and they're vacillating between centralizing and decentralizing, and it's not proving itself in the performance of the business, then it's probably not effective. But like I said, I need a lot more information, but would love to talk about that more. So let me run in and see if what we're going to talk about helps. Oops, wait, I forgot to go over this slide. Seems it's more the latter. Yeah. All right. And this actually would be a great thing for them to do. So this is the growth readiness scorecard. A number of you in the audience completed it, and I madly did my analysis and sent a report back to you. Super fun. Love doing this stuff. I can get lost in this all day long. But grab your phones. I'll have one more slide that has it on there so that I can kind of keep rolling. So if you miss it on the first go around, you'll get it on the next one. And this will also be sent to everybody, so you'll have access to it there. The growth readiness scorecard literally takes like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and it gives me just a wealth of information. All right. It's best when the whole team does it, though. It's great when one person does it, because it's like, here's where your perceptions of your business have span in between them. But when the whole team does it, it's like a heat map, and I can really pull a lot of good stuff together. Okay, so going back to the chat, this is when I'm looking at restructuring, or I'm looking at the structure itself, this is a foundational piece of getting from stage 2 to stage 6. And it's never one and done. It's a living, breathing entity of the business. And a lot of people have done this, so it may not be new to you, but if it's new, yay. And this is where AI squared inserts the stage as well. So the first thing that I love to do with clients is I map out a functional org chart, no names, companies, clients get really funny about that. Like, no names, like, no names. What functions are required for this business to do what it needs to do? Not the number of team members on that in that function, just what are the basic functions? Because what I have found is in between stage 3 and 4, when it gets overly engineered, if you will, overly SOP'd, the org chart tends to get overly complex as well. We kind of even forget what we have sometimes, depending on how big it is. But I have a way to manage this. I have a tool for that too. This is my competency matrix. So we create this functional org chart. We take off all the names. We pick out what the clear functions are. And then number 2 is the crux of it all. So if you weren't listening before, I'm going to tap on the camera. Listen right now. So we're going to identify 1 to 3 powerful deliverables for each functional role. This is a game changer. This isn't the list of tasks that they do, because if you're the manager and your team member has a list of tasks, how do you know they get done? You've got to watch over their shoulder. You've got to look for things. It becomes very overly complex. When they have 1 to 3 powerful deliverables, you just have to see that they're delivering. And we use data. Don't get me wrong. Quantitative, qualitative data, creative data, algorithms, whatever it takes to figure out if they're delivering. And some companies are very, very creative with their data. So these 1 to 3 deliverables are how we map what is happening in each of the functions that serve the business. So this is all about serving the entity, which serves the marketplace with the problem they're solving or the need that they're fulfilling, or problems and needs if it's an enterprise. So once we have those deliverables, then we're going to identify what competencies are necessary for someone to be able to deliver. So again, we tend to throw a lot of people in the fire at work. It's not very nice. We like, oh, they've done it in their past. You can do it here. But we're going to identify those competencies. And then the next step, again, another important one, 2 and 4 are my favorites, is determine the capabilities of the team members in that role. Just because they've done it someplace else doesn't mean they can do it in this organization now. And I just had a great example of this with one of my clients. We had hired a sales manager, and he had worked at actually one of at our key competitors. So we thought, wow, this is like going to be amazing. And what we learned was we needed to build systems to be managed, and he was very used to managing them. So nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't a match. And we learned a lot in the process, and it was important that we have, what are the competencies required, what are the capabilities, so we don't end up putting somebody into that role that isn't equipped. So building the system and sustaining the system are very different skill sets. And could he do all of the things on the task list? Yes, of course he could, but we needed something a little bit more strategic. So determining the capabilities is really important. It helps us laser focus where learning matters, where to spend our resources on learning within the business. It also helps us see voids or areas where we have a number of people, but nobody does this thing that's really important as a capability or a competency, I mean. And then after we do competencies, capabilities, with a whole lot of C's in here, then we look at the capacity. And this is really the gold for clients who are strategically growing to sustain their growth. I have had some clients that had ebb and flow of, we laid off 20 people, then we hired 20 people, and then we laid off 10, and then we hired 15. It's like, whoa, let's put this in place so we can be more predictive about what we need and when we need to pull the trigger on hiring, because we recognize that the growth horse is getting a little bit ahead and we need to bring in somebody to support it on the fulfillment side or operations side. So all of these things really link together as a system. And where AI enters this stage is one of the things that I have found over the years is that we are task masters. You can give us 1,000-page to-do list, and man, we just feel joy crossing off all those to-dos as we go. But we don't know actually if we're doing the right things or not. And so thinking in terms of outcomes, what's the outcome? What's the deliverable of this function of marketing? I mean, most of us think we know it, but we're assuming because we have assumptions around what that means, assumptions around sales, assumptions around customer service. So all of these are just ripe for conversation around, what do we actually mean by that? What are we actually expecting this department to deliver so that, again, mapping up to serve the health of the entity, the health of the business, everybody's aligned. The roles within the functions of it, within those teams, everything maps up to business performance and profitability and impact. Those are inextricably linked. So where artificial intelligence comes in, and I call it AI squared because I mean I'm in AI all day long. I may even be AI right now. No, I'm just kidding. Some of my favorites are Perplexity. I love Perplexity. Claude. I think I saw John in here. He introduced. Yep, I see your name there, John. Introduced me to Claude. Love it. And I tested Claude and Chat GPT on same prompts over and over and over, and it was Claude was by far significantly better for the work that I do. Perplexity is great. I love Julius for analyzing spreadsheets and data. And I love Loxo. It's a new one in my little repertoire for a kind of a soup to nuts recruiting, an AI recruiting engine. It's just unbelievable. So just putting those out there. But the thing about AI is, it is we're testing it, we're playing with it. Everybody's learning about it, what it can do and what it can't do. Obviously, there's bigger conversations about the great things, the dark things, all of that. I get all of that. For me, it's not smarter than like for the way I use it. It has to have authentic intelligence with it. There are nuances of the human experience that AI has not figured out yet. Not saying it won't figure it out at some point, but where we're at right now, it's not there. I know its capacity and its ability to do things is doubling like every 3 months or something crazy. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But the nuances of the human experience are still ours to own, which is great. All right, I see Alberto has his hand
Yeah.
up.
I was just going to say, I see Alberto has his hand up.
Yes, yes. Alberto, do you have a question for me?
You're muted, Alberto.
Give him a second.
Also, take a look at the chat.
I don't see anything from Alberto in the chat.
I know.
Alberto, your microphone is muted if you have a question or a comment.
That's okay.
Hmm.
We'll give him another chance. We'll have questions at the end as well. All right. So keep rolling on. An example of AI squared is a client that I have. We're building a success sharing program right now. It's different than profit sharing. It's based upon their salary, their current salary, and their performance, but not just their performance. It's their individual performance, team performance, and organizational performance. And it's pretty complex. So my client and I, we worked with it. Actually, we worked on it for a couple of months because it just wasn't understanding the nuances of how quickly changing a reward structure changes behaviors. It's like immediately. So the nuance side, we kept trying to work it out, but we had to develop the calculator for ourselves and run several scenarios through it. But Perplexity accelerated that process by quite a bit. We probably wouldn't have even gotten to where we have without that extra component. So there's a lot of great things that I use it for with my clients, and but that authentic side has to be in the game, and we're getting better at seeing that as well, just moving along and reading people's posts like, is this real or not? If it has emojis, I'm kind of suspicious. Okay. So I did mention in a couple more things. I know we're getting close on time, so I want to be respectful of that. I mentioned those deliverables being really a powerful part of this process in how we evolve our team members, our culture, our leadership, our skills, and learning along the way with the growth of the business itself. So I want to dive into that a little bit more so you could have a sense of what I'm talking about here. So some sample outcome-based deliverables for some roles, for other roles outside of like a CEO or whatnot. And I just grabbed a few that are pretty common in most organizations. So head of sales, an outcome-based deliverable could be that the organization achieves sustainable revenue growth through strong client relations, or relationships. Now, if that's the deliverable, surely there's going to be a list of things that are done for that deliverable to show up. So when you hire someone and you say, can you do all these tasks? It's, yeah, I can do those tasks. When you frame it in the way of an outcome, can you actually help the business achieve sustainable revenue growth through strong client relationships? Can I deliver on that? That's a little bit of a different, there's a little bit more skin in the game in that one. And it's clarity to the person to say, okay, if getting to town is where the deliverable is, I can go lots of different ways to get to town as long as I deliver. Obviously, nothing immoral, illegal, or unethical. We're not talking that, but it allows me to be innovative and creative in my work to cause that to happen. If you give me a list of things to do, I'm going to do those things. And I may be a creative person or an innovative person to do things differently, but that can also rock the boat and cause problems. So I really prefer the deliverable to be the headliner, because now I'm opening up that opportunity for my team members to be innovative and think differently about how we get to town. How do we get that to show up? So that's one, and you can read the others. I won't belabor all of them, but coming up with these for my teams is really challenging. We want to just create this list of tasks, and even when I say, "Well, that's not really a deliverable," they'll change a few words, and it's still an action. So AI is very helpful. This is a great example where we can prompt it to say, we're looking for the outcomes, the deliverables of, if this job is done correctly, this is what we expect from it. This is why we invest money in this position or in this function. And then oftentimes it'll help the person who's generating it go, oh, okay, now I get it. And once that switches on, it's pretty easy. But getting there it's a bit of a struggle for all the right reasons. All right, let's see. Let me go to the next one now. Okay, so we talked about all of these things that are evolving, and I'll show that. Well, let's just jump back there for a second. If we look at all of these things that are evolving for us to get to the next level of maturity, yes, revenue, headcount, years in business, yes, important. Overlaying maturity, you can see many of these are related to the people side of the business. How we respond to change, leadership, decisions, rewards, communication, culture, what we find to be successful, what we claim is progress. Like, this is a very human element of our business. So not only is creating the structure and accountability for sustainable growth to actually happen, but I also use a tool called the Core Value Index. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this out there. I am not a huge fan, strikingly, shockingly, of assessments, because oftentimes they pigeonhole people into this, oh, well, she's a blah, 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 and that's all she could ever be. What I like about Core Value Index, the number one things, it's 97.7% reliable. So I had my daughter take it when she was 15. She's 17 now. If she takes it at 35 years old, 45 years old, there's nearly 100% chance that it'll be exactly like it is right now. And the other thing that's helpful with it, it accelerates for me in working with clients, it accelerates not just can they do the work, but are they hardwired to do that work? Like, I can do a lot of things. I don't really enjoy doing everything, but I can do a lot of them. And in the Core Value Index, and I've got articles about it on my website, and I'm happy to talk with people about this, because I do find it to be the one tool that is really helping my leadership teams and executive teams, boards, whatnot, get aligned quickly. And it doesn't pigeonhole anybody. All four of the areas, it's a quadrant like many of the others, but it's very helpful in ensuring that if somebody's not a detailed person, let's not throw them into a role where that's going to become very important, right? So I'll show you mine. Take a leap here, a leap of being judged. That's right. So here's mine. The quadrants are builder, merchant, innovator, and banker. Yeah, I'm wild innovator, which is your problem solver. Your builder is the person who like decides and goes, let's go. They connect the dots. They're very intuitive. Let's go, let's go. Your merchant is your relationship person. So the builder wants to build, but you got to have people to come along with you. Your innovator is basically your problem solver, and your banker is your risk mitigator. So it is not uncommon. Well, it's a little uncommon, but not terribly uncommon to have somebody who is a strong builder banker, meaning part of their brain is let's go, let's go, let's go. And it's like, the two people sitting on the shoulder, and the other person's like, no, it's too risky. And it can feel a little schizophrenic when you're like, I really can see this working, but I got the risk. It's just like this internal conversation. So I think of these like gas tanks. I can solve problems all day long. It's hard to, if there's not a problem to solve, I might make one up. So I can solve it. And then my next one is builders. So I solve problems and then I move, I get things going. But the beauty of it to me, working with teams, and like I said, I think I said this, I make force all my clients to their leadership teams to use these so that we can accelerate our progress. But it really helps us see, who's depending on their intuition versus their cognition. So another client I have, the founder is super high builder innovator. So he's kind of the opposite of me. And his team is mostly made up of engineers. They don't reside in the builder area. So when he's like, hey, let's go, this is great, we're going to diversify into this new market, the brakes come on from the rest of the leadership team because they're not relying on their gut instinct, and they find that very risky. So it can show up like personality problems, but in essence it's just our hard wiring that says, whoa, I'm supposed to be the person that says, whoa, let's put on the brakes, and there needs to be someone on the team that says, no, let's go. And then we find how to get there, what that middle ground is. So the intuition and cognition is really important. The difference between creative and practical is important. As we're on a team together trying to make decisions, we're looking at it through these different lenses. And then if we kind of prefer community or independent work. So you can see for me, I rely heavily on my cognitive, creative, and independent. And so, yeah, consultants that fits me. Fits me pretty well. But oftentimes it's interesting, I heat map this just as I heat map the results from the growth readiness scorecard, because it's not that we all have to be the same. God, we don't want to all be the same, but we need to understand where the span is. We need to understand where we're disconnected. And it doesn't mean that we all have to agree to everything and that's going to make things better. But we do need to have a process or a system to be able to align, because you're not going to successfully grow in these stages of organizational growth if we can't get over that piece of like, oh, nope, we're going to do this, nope, we're going to do that. We have to be able to rally behind each other, move forward, keep the business moving forward, test and refine, come back and iterate to say, yes, it worked, or nope, we need to shift again. And I think that's really what causes businesses that I've worked with over the years to move through stages more fluidly than ones who really have to nope, we're not doing this. We got to agree to this, and then nobody's happy. So hoping that this is helpful. These are helpful tools. All right. We just have a couple more to go, and we have a couple minutes. So we're right on task, even though I'm talking a million miles an hour. So we've got two different QR codes here. My daughter did not like this slide. She's like, this is a horrible slide. So sorry about that. One is for the core value index, and it will go into a portal where I can see the results. If you want to upgrade yours, it gives you your first two primary core values, your hardwiring, those gas tanks where you like to kind of hang out and spend time. And you can get it, you can upgrade it for $50, but I'm happy to pass through to ASQ. I'm happy to pass through. My cost is only $35. So if it's something you're interested in, don't pay the full price, get the discount. That's very helpful. And then the growth alignment, this isn't the growth alignment framework. This is the growth readiness scorecard. This is the one that will really help your team identify where are you in terms of organizational maturity. And a lot of the symptoms of problems that you might be facing from day to day may be a result of having very different perceptions on those 10 elements that make up each stage, particularly the crisis catalyst. I just did this with a nonprofit organization in Las Vegas, and so fun because a lot of nonprofits are very aspirational. We want to be here, and the reality just didn't match the how they viewed the systems and processes and how progress was measured was very different from where they wanted to be. So they spanned all 6 stages on their heat map as a team. And it was a very helpful conversation from them. And they're like, wow, we have a lot to talk about. Like, yes, that's what you're supposed to do with this, is get aligned. And then we can start, where do we want to go, and start marching in that direction because we have a map. All right. As we wrap up here, I have some offers for you for showing up and joining us tonight. I'm happy to provide, complete the scorecard because that gives me something to work off of. Happy to provide a 90-minute strategy session with your leadership team post growth readiness scorecard, because that will really help us find out where span is, where we're aligned, what we need to bring forward, because we could have a lot of things up in stage 4 5, but there might be some things residing back in stage 1. We got to bring that up so that we can continue moving forward. And or I'm happy to do a core value index aggregate team debrief. So both of those tools are great to do by yourself, and you can kind of get the sense of what they are. The complexity comes when we have to overlay them, and so that's really where my little superpower is to debrief on what we're seeing. Reach out to me. You have my phone number, you have my email. My CyndiLaurin.com website has a lot more information on my insights page about how I look at the stages and culture and leadership and all the things that we talk about in business all the time. And we nod our heads and think we're talking about the same thing, but we may not be. And then, reach out if you'd like to get, be one of the first to hear about my book. It's called Orchestrated Randomness. That is my life. How to create your own luck in business and life. And it really is the whole framework and goes into a very deep dive for every stage and how to use it and leverage it and have a playbook to keep your business moving forward or to get to where you want to stay and stay there. Because if you don't stay intentional, even those stage 2s can slip back to starting up again. So hopefully that's helpful. And then as we wrap up here, I think we're getting right on the dot here. I couldn't have planned that any better. As Bob mentioned, I'm going to be presenting at the 2025 Baldrige Conference. On Monday, I'll be doing a presentation. And then on Tuesday, I'm literally doing a 6-hour all-day workshop on the framework and a lot of the other tools that I didn't get to today, but walking through how to set these things up. So it's going to be really great. It's going to take me back to my professor days. It's going to be really fun. So hopefully you'll join us October 13th and 14th in Denver. It should be a beautiful time to be in Denver, Colorado. And I didn't put the link on there, my bad, but I'm sure Bob's got that handy. And then last but not least, questions. Any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions for Cyndi? I just want to offer as well, you mentioned that's your 4th book, I believe, but there are 3 other books if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what Cyndi has been developing over the years. She's got a book called Catch. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about your 3 books?
Sure. Yep. Catch is about the Pike Place Fish Market in Seattle. I worked at the market for a year to understand what made them successful. The Rudolph Factor is about the Boeing C-17 program, which oddly enough shared a lot of the same cultural traits as Catch. So apparently things that fly have things in common. So this was about their Baldrige journey basically, and how they went from near cancellation to aligning 10,000 people and being awarded the Baldrige in 5 years. Phenomenal story. And this is a C-17. I was lucky enough to get this wonderful gem from them. And then the 3rd book is called Be a Frontline Hero. This is for people who have been promoted into a manager role, who have not managed before. And it is my way to ensure we don't parent people, but we have a toolbox to actually manage people. So there's 5 tools, very, very skinny, quick read. It sells very well on Amazon, I think, because it's just so darn skinny. And it's fable based. So about a girl named Emily who gets promoted at the pizza place into a manager, and she hates it.
And I endorse all 3 books. They're all very well written. Very
Thank
excellent.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Got a lot of accolades, Cyndi. So good
Thank you.
good for you.
Thank
Yeah,
you
if you want to
so
learn
much.
more about the Baldrige Conference, just do a Google search on 2025 Baldrige Conference, and it'll take you to the link. And gives you a lot more information about the theme of the conference is this year is getting better at getting better. So how do you make continual improvement part of your operations? And then how do you learn to do it faster and become a learning organization? And you got the program for both days. On day 2, as Cyndi mentioned, she'll be giving one of the 6 workshops. But for people who'd rather go out on a tour, the option is available to go on what we call an innovation tour, where the coach buses will take people around to different organizations in the Denver area who have learned how to create a process for innovation. And you're going to see that in place, a working model in several different organizations. One of them is a city of Fort Collins. But then there is another organization, not a whole city, but just a library, but it's a library district. So they manage multiple libraries within the area. And that's just two of the stops on that innovation tour. So it's a very fun-filled conference. And again, it's targeted at the organizations who are just trying to get started on their improvement journey. So hopefully you can present to your management team, and maybe you'll be able to attend.
Great. Super.
But Cyndi, will your presentation be available for viewing?
Yes. Yeah, I will send it to
Me.
who should I send it? Okay, I'll send it to you as soon as we're done here.
Okay. And then her presentation will be available on our My ASQ community site. So there is one more question from Adriano. Have you encountered any nuances that need to be considered when working help organizations to grow the framework based on certain characteristics, industries?
Yeah. Actually, no, it's funny. You would think that there would be some nuances, but I think because the framework is built on innate human behavior and really kind of the psychology around organizational dynamics, it's not going to change. So I've worked with every size of company and virtually every industry, including like the more emerging psychedelic uh, therapies and I mean things industries I've never even heard of. I've worked in, and at the end of the day, there is this commonality with the framework, which is I think it's why I'm so excited to get it out there. I've had it in my back pocket for a long time, not really wanting to share it because it was like my secret IP, my secret sauce, but but it needs to get out there. So characteristics, not necessarily industry agnostic and size agnostic. Haven't noticed. I mean, there are nuances obviously to every industry, but not as it relates to a sustainable growth framework. That's helpful.
Well, I'll put a shameless plug in for Cyndi. Not only consults and has these different tools available, we in Sway and moving towards Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence, we also use another tool that Cyndi, again, I think you helped develop for the organization, kind of a project tracking tool, project management called Execute to Win.
Yeah.
So if in your organization you have all these teams, but you struggle how to get them going and delivering and reporting such that your meetings don't go on and on and on. You want to shorten those meetings, yet have work done between meetings. This tool called Execute to Win, we find is a very valuable tool. And that's another talk for another day, perhaps, but
yeah. It's a growth operating system. It's probably the best I found. I used to work at ETW and I love the model. It's very much like Baldrige. It is non-prescriptive introspective work. So the framework just lays really nicely on that growth operating system. So thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for presenting. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So Marco has hand up. Marco?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to ask Cindy, in manufacturing, use data mining. What is the difference or the similarity between data mining and AI?
And AI. Well, I think it depends on what you're needing from AI when it comes to data mining. I use it for analyzing like just large bouts of data from some of my clients. Like they'll give me 25 spreadsheets and be like, hey, how do these things work together? Like, I think I need to go to Julius and get some help. And I think where it's helpful is I can analyze the data. It takes me a long time because I dive all in. So with AI, it just accelerates the process, and then it becomes kind of this back and forth. With Julius, that's my preferred data analysis AI tool that I use. But hopefully that's helpful. It kind of depends on what we're looking for, and we kind of have to know what we want from AI when we ask it. If we ask it something that we don't really know the answer to, then we're still not going to know if it's the right answer or not. So we have to really know what we're seeking, and then we have to validate it with our own knowledge or with other data points that can correlate to it. So but the acceleration piece is amazing. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I use it all the time.
Yes, but data mining also have a software that can make quicker whatever you are looking for. So what I think that might be that data mining is limited to what the data that you have in on your manufacturing floor and your manufacturing process, while AI is searches everywhere.
Yeah.
Some parts might be wrong, and people have to be aware of that.
Yes.
So matter of fact, what is it? Outlook. Microsoft has data mining in their browser, and it gives all the you can ask anything, and they tell you like in 5 seconds comes up everything, but also give you warnings in regards to that something might not be correct and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
I believe that AI is a type of data mining, but in a larger spectrum.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. We're aligned around the whole, like you have to know, you have to validate it. You have to know, you kind of have to know before you put your prompts in to make sure that it's giving you accurate data. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Alberto has hand up. You're on mute, Alberto, if you want to say something.
Well, guess we should just move on.
I guess. Okay. So thank you, Cyndi.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So I'm going to stop the recording at this point.
All right.
All right.
That will be great.